Rain needles Cannon Street, and the bell at number 28 startles the house. Sarah Milson lifts a candle, descends the stair, and says clearly, "I know who it is." Minutes stretch. The hallway smells of wet wool. Somewhere, a gas jet coughs and dies. Elizabeth, the maid, later finds blood on tile, a broken taper, and quiet that hurts. Sarah's shoes sit neatly paired, as though courtesy survived whatever followed downstairs. Outside, a woman in a hooded cloak recoils at the threshold, whispering, "Oh no, I cannot." What does that last sentence mean when spoken before a locked door and a storm? A brief, neutral note is helpful. Details matter because procedure was weak in 1866. Neat shoes, a quenched flame, and a missing tool can reshape the entire investigation. We will not trade horror for sensation. We will trade rumor for disciplined possibilities instead. Near-term consequence is focus. We begin with time, doorway, and the hour of silence that followed. And here is our bridge. Before suspects and motives, we must freeze the clock and test the timeline. 9 o'clock closes the Bevington premises. Shutters sound, ledgers shut, and footsteps fade upstairs. Sarah carries a candle to the entry, rehearsed in this nightly ritual of caution. Rain thickens, carts vanish, the street narrows to a ribbon of lamplight and puddles. Between 9 and 10, records show no deliveries, no visitors logged, and no alarm raised. How long can quiet hide danger before a household reads silence as a message? Elizabeth hears nothing unusual until worry, not noise, pushes her toward the stairwell landing. A careful note is warranted. Gaps in time are evidence when clocks and eyes agree. The missing hour grants opportunity, room to knock, persuade, enter, and argue without alerting neighbors. Night watch routes and public house closings narrow possibilities to people who knew routines intimately. Close observers note the absence of forced entry, a detail that argues against random intrusion. Immediate consequence follows. Investigators will privilege acquaintances, regular callers, and anyone trusted with the latch. Our bridge is set. The final words at the door now sharpen into questions about familiarity. "I know who it is" does not sound like fear. It sounds like recognition and routine. Sarah worked amid tradesmen, porters, clerks, repairers, and callers who learned her name by habit. Some brought invoices, others fetched parcels, a few handled keys or gas work when something sputtered. Which voice earns enough trust to cross a threshold after hours when rain muffles caution? Neighbors recall regular knocks, rhythmic and polite, the kind that signal business rather than surprise. Customers sometimes returned late for forgotten items. Messengers sometimes strayed off schedule when taverns delayed them. An editorial note is useful. Familiarity can be camouflage, not comfort, especially in small economies. Investigators therefore trawl address books, delivery logs, pawn receipts, and letters tucked behind mantel clocks. They list everyone who benefits from Sarah's kindness, secrecy, or simple willingness to open doors. Near-term consequence follows. The suspect pool narrows to acquaintances with reason to press after closing. A bridge now forms. The room itself must answer whether welcome or staging shaped the violence. Her shoes stand paired, toes aligned, as if etiquette survived 10 crowded minutes of chaos. The gas jet is dark yet not shut. No telltale click marks a careful turn. Keys lie scattered as though dropped mid-motion, while a candle stump splinters on wet tile. A crowbar rests nearby, oddly clean. Inventory notes a second bar missing from the store. Was the scene curated to imply struggle, or did ritual habit, like removing shoes, precede danger? Old houses teach routines. People tidy themselves at thresholds, even when trouble is already inside. A neutral observation belongs here. Anomalies matter most when multiple point in the same narrative direction. Officers sketch positions, test drafts, sniff for extinguished gas, and pace distances between door and fall. They log the missing tool and canvas rag merchants who might sell cloth for wiping. Immediate consequence is caution. The room reads deliberate, not frantic, so assumptions must slow their pulse. And the bridge is waiting on the stoop, a hooded woman who would not cross inside. The hooded woman stops at the threshold, lifting skirts away from the wet stone. She peers inside, hears breathless movement, and whispers, "Oh no, I cannot." Does she refuse from fear, propriety, or complicity, knowing touch invites entanglement afterward? Victorian etiquette punishes women who cross private thresholds unbidden, especially during scandal. Blood on tiles carries stigma. Witnesses risk gossip, suspicion, and clerical questions about virtue. She retreats to the curb, glancing both ways as if measuring escape routes. A delivery boy notices her carriage lamp, guttering once, then steadying in the rain. Officers later canvass door to door, sketching her cloak hem and the hat brim. A neutral observation helps. Memory preserves silhouettes better than faces, especially in storms. Neighbors report a low, contralto voice, educated vowels, and a perfume resembling lavender water. Which households purchase that scent nearby, and who travels with a private coachman nightly? The description narrows circles of inquiry without naming anyone reckless or prematurely. Near term consequences focus. Investigators prioritize locating her driver, route, and purpose. And the bridge forms. The city police assume control, and questions become systematic. Detective Harvey steps through the doorway, nodding once, then orders lanterns at measured intervals. Constables cordon the entry, keeping feet from smearing prints, mud, or candle debris. Rain has already diluted blood edges, softened ash, and whispered away delicate shoe impressions. Did the killer plan for weather, or simply seize fortune's cover when clouds opened? Clerks unroll butcher's paper for mapping, placing tokens where objects and bodies were found. Harvey interviews Elizabeth separately, then returns to retime her movements against street clocks. A neutral note belongs here. Procedure varies wildly in 1866, depending on leadership. Some districts photograph scenes, others rely entirely on notebooks, sketches, and memory under gaslight. The room reads deliberate. Extinguished gas without a valve turn suggests breath, not instrument. Shoe removal suggests familiarity. The scattered keys suggest interruption, not initial violent entry. Harvey marks potential approach routes, including tradesmen's alleys and the warehouse yard gate. He orders a search for missing tools, cloths, and garments that might show wiping. Immediate consequence is a working hypothesis: preparedness, acquaintance, and a staged afterscape. The bridge points ahead to the mystery of twin crowbars, one present, one vanished. The ledger lists 2 crowbars. The storeroom shows one space empty, one tool returned. On the floor by Sarah's body lies the return bar, dry, oddly free of stains. A cleaner's cloth is missing from a peg, though rain might explain a soaked rag. Who has time, nerve, and reason to wipe a weapon, then leave its twin behind? Ironmongers recall recent purchases. Porters remember loans. Warehouse boys trade tools like playing cards. It's worth noting that wiping patterns differ: straight pulls, tight spirals, or hurried blotches near edges. A spotless bar during a storm argues intention, not luck. It telegraphs calm after violence. Harvey expands the search to rag dealers, chandlers, and smithies that polish second-hand iron. He compares lengths, bevels, and nicks, hoping the missing bar's signature appears in circulation. Neighbors mention a man who favored tools as props, spinning them when he talked debts. Immediate consequence is an evidence map, richer than rumor, pointing toward borrowers and polishers. The bridge's motive: cleaning suggests calculation, and calculation often rides alongside steady, profitable leverage. Sarah's history surfaces in fragments: a first marriage gone sour, then a second without papers. Bigamy is more than scandal. It is leverage in a city that prices reputation. Anonymous letters threaten exposure. Small payments leave her purse at regular, weary intervals. Who profits from a secret that never ends, drawing coin month after month without mercy? Friends describe gentleness hardened by caution. She saved receipts, folded flat beneath the tea caddy. The notes are brief, oddly polite, as if commerce had invaded the language of threat. It bears noting that blackmail thrives on routine. Predictability keeps courage low and doors opening. Harvey charts due dates against sightings, visits, and nights when shutters open late for business. Several men fit the pattern: debtors, a messenger, a clerk who lingered past closing. A pawn ticket surfaces in a coat lining, initialed only, but dated to last week. Immediate consequence is clarity. The case now carries a working motive with a calendar attached. And the bridge is practical. Follow the money to the counter where her belongings became collateral. The pawn trail begins with a locket missing from Sarah's dressing box and a ring unaccounted. A ticket dated last week lists initials only, scribbled fast, then folded into a coat seam. Clerks recall a man selling small sentimental items that fetch steady but unremarkable sums. Which counter converts affection into shillings so quietly that a victim barely notices the drain? Ledgers show repeat visits spaced like paydays. The same booth, the same cautious hour. A neutral note belongs here. Pawnbroking is memory with receipts. Habits etch themselves in margins. Harvey triangulates descriptions: height, coat cut, a nervous habit of spinning a tool like talk. A second shop confirms the pattern, recalling a seller who haggled hard but never bragged. Doorway boys supply route gossip. Which alleys run dry, which shutters lift after curfew. Tickets map onto Sarah's threatened due dates with an elegance that feels cruelly deliberate. Immediate consequences reduction. Suspects thin to men who pawned on schedule and knew her hours. And the bridge is a name whispered often enough to become ink. William Bill Smith. Bill Smith enters the file like a gentleman frayed at the cuffs and the conscience. A bright school record trails him. Gambling notes and small loans follow closer, breathing down neck. He knows pawnbrokers by first name and bartenders who trade tabs for stories and tools. Does a man who lives on credit also learn to price secrets with professional precision? Witnesses describe charm that calcifies when challenged, a smile that folds flat within seconds. He haunts streets near Sarah's shop, sometimes lingering as shutters descend and lamps thin. An editorial note is useful. Motive grows teeth when money problems meet leverage problems. Smith fits both, and his schedule overlaps with the missing hour more than coincidence allows. Still, evidence must walk on two legs, opportunity and capacity, before courtrooms listen seriously. He is strong enough to stage a scene, shrewd enough to wipe iron in rain. Immediate consequence is a pivot. Investigators chase his movements, friends, and favored taverns for the night, and the bridge points to weather and architecture. The storm, the corridors, and gas gone dark. Rain performs cover work, hammering slates and gutters until footsteps fold into ordinary weather. Corridors here are narrow, elbowed twice, and floored with tile that swallows sound when wet. A side gate off the warehouse yard offers privacy. Tradesmen use it after closing hours. The front latch shows no bruising. Hinges complain softly as if recently oiled by habit. Inside, a gas jet stands dark without the valves click. Breath, not metal, killed the flame. Would a stranger know which tap to twist, or where drafts will snuff light more quickly? A sulfur thread lingers in the hall, thin and sour, announcing darkness arranged rather than accidental. Storm bursts time into pockets. A careful caller could speak, persuade, and move unseen between peels. An editorial note is useful. Architecture colludes with knowledge. Shortcuts reward those who already belong. Routes from curb to office avoid windows. The warehouse stair lands 2 strides from the entry. Immediate consequence follows. The scenario favoring a familiar visitor outcompetes burglary by brute force tonight, and the bridge stands obvious. If science cannot seal this, we must test the era's limits. In 1866, science offers more shadows than spotlights to courtroom minds. Blood groups are undiscovered. Stains are stains, argued by color, crust, and unreliable kitchen tests. Finger marks are curiosities in journals, not credentials that magistrates or juries will trust. Scene photography exists unevenly. Some districts own cameras, others trust sketches under trembling lamplight. How do you prove anything when chemistry whispers and juries demand thunder they can hear? Harvey therefore builds with what the era permits: timelines, witness memory, and stubbornly consistent objects. He notes which details repeat across mouths and which collapse when retold in a new room. He catalogs distances walked in rain, doors that close softly, and tools that gleam too clean. A neutral observation belongs here. Procedure is character. Careful habits substitute for missing laboratories. Clerks double enter times. Constables rehearse statements separately. Contradictions become diagnostic rather than scandalous. Immediate consequence is strategic humility. No miracle test will arrive. Patterns must carry the weight, and the bridge is physical. Reconstruct the assault itself, angle by angle, to see if staging shows. Harvey reheats the scene with chalk and twine, rebuilding distances the rain tried to erase. Blood spatters form short fans, consistent with low arcs, not wild overhead swings. Impact marks on tile edge leftward, suggesting a right-handed blow delivered from the threshold side. The candle stump's wax smear points away from the door, as if thrown while turning. Does the choreography read as struggle or as a story arranged for future readers? Skull fractures cluster rather than scatter, implying 2 decisive strikes and 1 confirming blow. The clean crowbar fails this math. Its edges should wear a darker, grittier testimony. A rag-shaped absence on the shelf pairs too neatly with a spotless iron at feet. A quiet note helps. Staging often leaves seams, details that honor neatness over necessity. He times the extinguishing. Breath and cupped hand can snuff a flame faster than a valve. Keys fell near the first spatter, likely dropped when surprise broke the rhythm of manners. Immediate consequence follows. The narrative favors a prepared visitor who controlled light, tempo, and aftermath. And the bridge is audible. Someone later claimed to see a uniformed man leaving into rain. A porter swears he saw a railway man hurry from the doorway, collar turned high. Cap shape, he says, and brass buttons flashing, then shadow, swallowing stripes down the lane. How much truth can a stormy glimpse hold when cloth and confidence imitate each other? Uniforms are costumes that travel. Surplus jackets drift to pawnbrokers and back onto civilian shoulders. Harvey checks rosters at nearby stations, comparing shifts, heights, and habitual routes after closing bells. Two guards match the build but carry alibis stamped by ticket clerks and timesheets. A neutral note is useful. Specificity earns trust. Caps and buttons alone do not carry names. Another witness remembers only dark cloth and a quick step, less glamorous but more credible. Still, the uniform report shapes inquiry. It directs attention toward men who move unseen at night. Constables canvass taverns where porters drink, asking about debts, favors, and loans of jackets. One bartender recalls a smooth talker borrowing a cap for a joke the previous week. Immediate consequence is refinement. The lead becomes borrowed uniform, not railway employee, tightening the circle. And our bridge turns to a different distraction. A young man soon arrives to confess everything. Near midnight, a young man staggers into the station and claims the murder outright. He offers details confidently, then trips. Wrong tile color, wrong corner, wrong position of keys. His watch time clashes with the bellman's log. Rain hours disagree with his neat narrative. Does he shield a lover, seek forgiveness, or audition for a headline and a myth? Officers ask about the crowbar. He swears it dripped, though the found bar was spotless. He says the gas was turned off. Witnesses smelled breath-snuffed flame, not a careful valve. Shown household objects, he guesses twice, never naming the missing rag from the storeroom peg. Asked to recognize Elizabeth, he falters, calling her the widow, a mistake that tightens jaws. A neutral observation belongs here. Notorious cases magnetize imposters, confession being its own dark theater. The statement is recorded, then quietly filed under distraction. Release follows with a cautionary word. Near-term consequences wasted hours, yet the process hardens criteria for everything still to come. And the bridge turns practical. Timelines on paper must meet train bells, tickets, and miles to Slough. Clerks unroll railway timetables, conductors recall faces, rain-smudged tickets dry beside lantern heat. Several witnesses place Bill Smith in Slough that evening, then later, at a public house. A tavern ledger shows his name near wagers. The landlord remembers a restless, polished talker. Could he slip away, race to London, kill, then return without stirring every clock? Departure windows pinch tight. Arrivals land after shutters, before bells, but rarely match the silent hour. A shop receipt anchors him mid-evening. A porter notes him arguing over change near the dock. A neutral note is useful. Clocks drift, tongues exaggerate. Reliability grows only when testimonies overlap. Harvey tests the route himself. Even with luck, the round trip bruises plausibility badly. Defense solicitors pounce, sketching the journey on maps, then letting jurors do the simple math. Investigators, cautious, still probe accomplice angles, timing favors, and messengers who might ferry tools. Near-term consequences momentum. The Crown's theory thins while the alibi gains bones and breath. And the bridge is inevitable. Searches rooms for stains and fibers that might contradict the timetable. Smith's wardrobe yields a coat with rusty flecks and a waistcoat with reddish smears. A constable mutters blood, but a hatter identifies dye used in felts and ribbons. Bottles on the shelf smell of mordants. Cloth squares show tidy tests for color fastness. Are we seeing violence, or merely the messy arithmetic of a trade that stains everything? Harvey sends samples to a chemist who sniffs, heats, and notes vegetable tints, not iron. The report cannot prove innocence, but it blunts the blade aimed at Smith's pockets. A neutral observation fits here. Confirmation: bias loves red. It rarely asks which red it prefers. Receipts for felt, shellac, and brim wire turn up, aligning with dye, not with gore. A landlady recalls Smith cursing stains after a job before the date of Sarah's death. The spotless crowbar returns as contrast, clean iron beside honest, work-worn pigments in a cluttered room. Immediate consequence is retreat. Investigators drop bloody clothes from the charge sheet's center column, and the bridge is inevitable. If garments won't speak, perhaps the pawnbroker's oath will carry weight. Under oath, the pawnbroker squints at counsel, then describes a man selling sentimental trifles. He recalls height, a trimmed mustache, perhaps gloves. The rest dissolves into hand waves and hedges. How far can a counter-memory travel when gaslight flickers and trade never stops? He admits he glanced more at items than faces, pricing grief rather than biographies. Defense asks about distance, the angle of lamps, and how often he misidentifies regulars. A neutral note is needed. Recognition loves confidence, accuracy loves context, lighting, and time to look. Another clerk recalls a seller's nervous tick, spinning a tool while haggling, tapping iron on wood. The detail helps, but not enough. Caps and mustaches court fashion, not identity. Counsel raises contamination. Newspapers printed sketches, witnesses refine recollections to match yesterday's headline. The magistrate warns the gallery, the pawnbroker swears again, then admits uncertainty in a low voice. Immediate consequence is fragility. The prosecution keeps the link but stops leaning all its weight on it. And the bridge turns public. Press cartoons amplify certainty the witnesses themselves cannot honestly sustain. Newspapers pounce, turning fragments into banners, sketches into faces readers swear they recognize. Headlines borrow Sarah's last words. I know who it is, as if certainty were contagious. Does print clarify or calcify, fixing guesses so firmly that memory hardens around them? Illustrators invent shadows, columnists sermonize about city morals, and women who open doors late. An editorial note belongs here. Sensational rhythm sells. Precision keeps slower company on page 4. Neighbors absorb the chorus. Soon, witnesses repeat phrasing they read rather than what they saw. A lavender perfume becomes foreign. A cap becomes railway. A cloak becomes black as guilt. Harvey restricts leaks, warns clerks, and separates interviews by days to dilute contamination. Reporters retaliate by quoting sources close, turning caution into suspicion in the public mind. Jurors will eventually arrive carrying newsprint notepaper, even if they swear to clean slates. Immediate consequence is distortion. The case now lives inside a theater it never asked for. And the bridge is procedural. The Crown drafts its theory while the defense stacks counterweights quietly. Indictment papers thicken, prosecutors knit motive to means, blackmail threads to iron and silence. They rehearse the sequence: a familiar knock, a snuffed jet, 2 blows, and staging. Is the chain strong enough, or are we threading beads that only look like a necklace? Clerks list exhibits: crowbar, keys, letters, pawn tickets, each tagged, boxed, and signed twice. Harvey polishes testimony timelines, pruning adjectives, practicing the walk from door to fall. Defense solicitors pull railway tables, tavern ledgers, and witnesses whose evenings align like clock teeth. A neutral note is useful. Strong cases simplify. Weak ones grow ornate like overcarved wood. The Crown debates whether to float the uniform rumor or leave it to fade. They decide on caution. Mention the sighting, emphasize the borrowed cap, then hurry past. A pretrial hearing tests nerves. The magistrate asks for economy and evidence, not embroidery. Immediate consequence is polarization. Both narratives feel plausible until jurors taste their seams in court. And the bridge slides open. The Old Bailey will stage day 1 with iron and paper on display. The Old Bailey inhales as exhibits arrive. Iron on a velvet tray, keys in a dish. Jurors lean forward. The crowbar gleams too clean under skylight that edits color and mood. Shoes appear next, neat as in the hallway. Letters rustle like threats learning to speak. Can spectacle stand in for proof when objects behave better than stories stitched around them? The prosecutor walks the sequence. A trusted knock, a breath-snuffed jet, 2 blows, a stage. An editorial note belongs here. Presentation persuades, but choreography risks polishing gaps into invisible seams. Elizabeth testifies softly. The hooded woman's description follows, reduced to scent, silhouette, and hesitation. Harvey maps times on a blackboard, chalk ticking like a second, third, and fourth hand. The uniform rumor surfaces carefully, labeled borrowed, then set down before it bites back. Jurors watch without questions. One scribbles hard when the pawn tickets pass hand to hand. Immediate consequence is impressionistic. The Crown's canvas looks complete until you touch the paint and feel air. Our bridge is tomorrow's defense. Alibi, timetables, and procedures that will test each neat edge for cracks. Morning breaks with defense witnesses lined like milestones: porter, landlord, better, clerk, and guard. 11 voices place Bill Smith in Slough when London's hallway filled with rain and blood. Could conspiracy stitch so many mouths, or are clocks and coins simply stronger than suspicion here? Timetables spread open. Counsel walks jurors through minutes, platforms, and delays that squeeze possibility thin. An editorial note is useful. Lineups then were theater, suggestive staging, whispered hints, and recycled faces. A constable admits improvised procedures, the pawnbroker hedges again, the borrowed cap shrinks toward irrelevance. The dye on Smith's coat earns a paragraph, then withers under a chemist's simple sniff. Harvey holds steady, but the room tilts. Reasonable doubt gathers like fog above Thames. Jurors glance at each other during a pause, weighing certainty against rotes and bells. Defense closes without flourish. Not proven, not provable, and not this man on this night. Immediate consequence is momentum. The Crown's thread phrase where the alibi knots pull hardest. And the bridge is instruction. The judge will soon define beyond reasonable doubt for a restless room. The judge's voice is even, careful, and spare, as though trimming ivy from law's stones. He explains burdens plainly. The Crown must convince you firmly, not perfectly and not imaginatively. Reasonable doubt, he says, is hesitation that remains after honest effort to reconcile evidence. Can sincerity replace proof, or choreography substitute for chains that link cleanly, link after link? He warns against rumor's gravity. Newspapers are not exhibits, and sketches are only arguments. Jurors must weigh witnesses by context, lighting, distance, weather, memory, and motives softly hiding underneath. A neutral observation follows. Instructions act like lenses. They bring seams into focus for the room. He summarizes alternatives: acquaintance, staging, blackmail, then notes clocks, trains, and dye that complicate simple stories. If two explanations stand, one guilt and one doubt, the verdict must honor doubt. Pens stop, throats clear. The gallery shifts. Even the crowbar seems heavier on its tray. Immediate consequence is alignment. Jurors now share a grammar for testing both narratives without guessing. And the bridge is quiet. Doors to deliberation close, and time slows to human speed again. They return before dusk, faces unreadable, boots whispering sawdust across a polished floor. The foreman rises, answers the clerk, and the words arrive: not guilty of murder. Smith exhales without smiling. The room exhales with him, some pleased, some shocked, many undecided. Does acquittal erase suspicion, or simply admit that tonight's tools cannot carve certainty from storm? The judge instructs decorum. No stain, he adds, settling a legal veil over a life. Elizabeth folds into herself. Tears quiet, eyes on shoes that once sat neatly by the door. Reporters run, pencils scratch, the crowbars carried out like a prop between shows. Harvey shakes hands, then looks past everyone as if measuring the distance to closure. A neutral note is needed. Verdicts resolve cases. They rarely resolve narratives that streets keep telling. Families write letters. Pawnbrokers lock tills. Taverns add an argument to their evening repertoire. Immediate consequence is dispersion. Attention uncoils, and participants return to routines that feel altered, slightly. And the bridge stands forward. Outcomes ripple into practice, nudging reforms that harden procedure for the next storm. The verdict ripples outward, touching desks, policies, and the slow machinery of habit. Superintendents circulate memos on identifications. No hints, no crowded rooms, no costumes that steer eyes. Chain of custody logs grow stricter. Signatures multiply. Parcels travel sealed instead of casually wrapped. Do reforms arrive only after failure, each improvement purchased with someone's unanswerable night? Medical men press for lab space. Magistrates begin tolerating photographs where sketches once sufficed. Newspapers print mea culpas in small type, then return to louder fonts by morning. A neutral observation belongs here. Institutions learn unevenly. Rules stick when leaders repeat them. Harvey files recommendations about staging, gas jets, and the mischief of nearly clean iron. Clerks update forms. Constables rehearse interviews separately, accepting slowness as the price of clarity. Training syllabuses add cautionary tales, borrowed uniforms, false confessions, and dyes mistaken for blood. Immediate consequence is traction. Small guardrails appear where the case skidded, smoothing tomorrow's turns. And the bridge is reflective. Let's weigh each object again and say what still truly holds. Line the exhibits on a table and ask each one to talk plainly. The shoes speak of custom and pause. They suggest familiarity rather than forced entry. The gas jet, dark without a twist, speaks of breath and deliberate darkness. Which objects carry their weight without help, and which lean on rumor to stand tall? The spotless crowbar whispers staging. The missing twin points toward planning more than panic. Letters hum with Blackmail's rhythm. Pawn tickets march on a schedule that rhymes with threats. The borrowed cap story limps. Possible, distracting, and never quite naming a face. Dye on garments recedes into trade, not violence. Keys confirm interruption, not ambush. A neutral note is helpful. Coherence matters more than quantity. Few strong pieces beat many weak. Harvey's ledger marks two columns, durable facts and theatrical debris, then closes with a sigh. Immediate consequences curricular. The durable list becomes tomorrow's training deck for new recruits. And the bridge is humane. Before we shelve the file, we should meet Sarah beyond exhibits. Sarah worked, counted, bargained, and softened hard days with competence that did not show off. A failed first marriage trailed her. A second without papers kept her cautious and exposed. Bigamy is not villainy here. It is vulnerability in a market that values reputations like coin. What protection did a woman own when secrets became rent due and mercy cost extra? Friends describe kindness tempered by boundaries, a ledger's discipline paired with tea and small laughter. She opened doors because business asked. She kept receipts because fear taught tidy habits. A neutral observation belongs here. Files compress lives. The person shrinks to clues unless we resist. Blackmailers price shame. The city priced hers steeply, then punished her for paying late. Elizabeth remembers simple things. How Sarah stacked gloves. How she hummed when rain began. The portrait does not acquit or convict. It restores weight to the name on the page. Immediate consequence is ethical. We will narrate with respect, refusing shortcuts that spend her twice. And the bridge turns speculative. What might change if a few tools and timings were different? Imagine the hallway fixed in silver salts, each spatter frozen before rain could smudge. Picture a proper lineup, separated witnesses, neutral prompts, and no borrowed costumes in the wings. Consider railway clocks synchronized, tickets stamped legibly, and conductors drilled to recall exact minutes. Would those additions collapse doubt or simply move it, neat and diminished, to a new seam? Photographs might test the crowbar story. Lineups might puncture confidence. Timetables might seal alibis shut. A neutral observation fits. Counterfactuals are tools for practice, not verdicts for ghosts. They teach where to reinforce floors, where stair treads creak, and where gas jets deserve attention. Harvey writes a final memo, turning if only into bullet points for the next storm. Constables read aloud at muster. Clerks revise forms. Pawnbrokers adjust ledgers to aid recall. The exercise grants no oracle, but it arms future rooms against similar temptations. Immediate consequence is preparedness. Small improvements stack, invisible until a night like this returns. And the bridge leads to language itself, the problem of last words and the power we grant them. I know who it is travels well. It fits headlines, juries, and family kitchens. Last words, comfort, accuse, and recruit. They anchor narratives even when details float away. When does a dying sentence guide inquiry, and when does it trap minds in a frame? Investigators must treat epilogues as clues, not compasses, suggestive, partial, and vulnerable to drift. Reporters should quote carefully, mark uncertainty, and refuse to harden guesses into names. A neutral observation belongs here. Language loves certainty. Justice survives by tolerating honest doubt. Teachers can model both: close reading without closure, empathy without embroidery, pace without panic. Our case shows how one phrase became banner, then burden, then background noise in court. It remains haunting, but not definitive, useful, but not a verdict stamped in brass. Households repeat it still, because stories need hinges, and this one swings on that line. Immediate consequence is choice. Tell it with humility, or repeat it as thunder without rain. And the bridges are ending. Step back, weigh what changed, and leave the door ajar for thought. We have walked a narrow hall where rain, masked steps, and certainty never quite arrived. The city offered two stories: blackmail and staging against trains and tavern clocks, and the clocks won. Acquittal did not cleanse the past. It admitted limits, the most honest tool available then. What do we owe a case like this, beyond appetite for drama and a tidy culprit? We owe Sarah better language, fewer shortcuts, and the discipline to doubt our favorite narratives. We owe Elizabeth soft attention, acknowledging how witnesses carry splinters long after courts go quiet. We owe procedure our patience, signatures, sealed bags, separate interviews, and lineups that do not whisper. Harvey's notes became guardrails. Newspapers, chastened briefly, learned a slower rhythm they sometimes forget. Near-term consequence for us is simple. Scripts, summaries, and thumbnails will avoid confident lies about certainty. Longer term, we will teach this file as a study in proportion. evidence to claim, empathy to tone. If justice is humility operationalized, then this night helped nudge humility into policy and habit. And the final question remains with you. Where is the line between healthy doubt and hurried blame?